Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to shed more light on President Obama's reckless refugee resettlement agenda and the danger that it poses to Americans. Now, in my office, we're getting many calls about this. As you hear about the new plans that he has, and also as our constituents watch the news of what is happening in Germany, what is happening in other communities. Let me cite just a couple of examples. Last week, according to the Wall Street Journal and numerous media outlets, 2 refugees from Iraq were arrested for making false statements involving terrorism. These arrests took place in California, one in Texas. The California arrest, one refugee came to the U.S. in 2012 and subsequently traveled to Syria in November 2013. He bragged in social media posts about fighting alongside terror groups such as Ansar al-Islam. This refugee returned to the U.S. a few months later, and when interviewed by the FBI in October of 2014, he denied being a part of any extremist group and denied providing material support to terrorists. What we found in Texas is this. The refugee was charged on 3 counts: attempting to provide material support to the Islamic State, procuring citizenship or naturalization unlawfully, and number 3, making false statements. This is precisely why President Obama's plan to admit thousands of additional Syrian refugees into the country at a time of heightened jihadist threats and the San Bernardino massacre is beyond reckless and is dangerous to our communities. There is no way to vet the refugees that are coming from Syria and Iraq and verify that they are the person represented in the documents that they carry. Are the documents false, or is the person who they say they are or someone else? It proves what many have been saying for months about Islamic extremists. They can and will exploit the refugee program. These arrests showcase what is so painfully obvious to the American people. The president's agenda is endangering our national security, and it is costing millions of dollars from our hardworking taxpayers. Let me ask you a few questions. Do you feel more or less safe than you did 8 years ago? Do you fear the attack of terrorism in your community? Do you question your safety when you go to a public event? How does the president's foreign policy and our national security affect you, where you work, where you live? How can the administration be so naive? How can the administration continue to put partisan politics over the safety of the American people? How can the administration continually refuse to name our enemy? Yes, we are at war with radical Islamic extremism. We must confront the danger of radical extremism and check the president's irresponsible resettlement agenda. I want to mention H.R. 4218. It's legislation that I drafted and introduced with Representatives Barletta, Desjardins, and Lamar Smith. Under the bill, no funding would be made available for refugee resettlement operations until 4 conditions are met. Congress passes a joint resolution approving of the President's Refugee Resettlement Plan. Number 2, CBO provides a report to Congress scoring the long-term cost of the program. Number 3, DHS submits a report identifying all terrorist and criminal activity connected to refugees since 2001. And number 4, the President submits a report to Congress on the prior year's cost of admitting refugees and proposes offset spending cuts to pay for the resettlement program. We must halt the President's refugee resettlement operations. It is simply too dangerous, and we cannot afford the risk to our nation's security. I yield back.